Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to my podcast. And my podcast is basically going to be about things you can't explain. And that falls under the category of supernatural. It could be UFOs, it could be things you might see in the sky that you know is not an airplane or a bird or some sort of man-made flying object. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this podcast is because it's been um, something I've been interested in since a young age. And it's always been taboo growing up in my religion. You know, being a Christian, I was always told not to pay attention to any of that stuff or that it's demonic and stuff like that. But I think it's just more to it. And not to say that demons don't exist, because I do believe in demons, I do believe in negative spirits, and I also believe in angels. So I'm not going to say that anything and everything that happens to us that we can't explain is demonic or something that's negative. But again, I wanted to start this because of my own personal experiences in life, just growing up, and things that happened to me fairly recently. And who knows why it happens, you know? And I would love to get the audience's input on any experiences or things that you guys may have come across or experienced, whether it be in a house you grew up in or somewhere you moved or just being out and about. But I guess I'll just jump right in and give you my first, I guess, solid experience. Something that I witnessed that I could not explain, that basically just kind of shook me to my core. And this happened years ago. I was dating someone, and she was going to Northeastern University in Boston at the time. And she was staying in a college dorm on Huntington Ave, right across the street from the Museum of Fine Arts, MFA, here in Boston. And it was a Wednesday night, and it was in the summer because it was hot. It was very humid, and it was probably around 10:30. She had called me, and I think it was a holiday, so a lot of the students were, not on campus. They probably went home or whatever. But anyway, I was bored, and she was bored, so we were just dating, just getting to know each other. And she invited me over to her dorm, and she said, I there's only two bedrooms here, and one of the bedrooms, that is empty because the girls went away for vacation, and she had her other roommate there, staying in her room. So there was like two beds each. So I guess there was four roommates altogether. So anyway, um, I went over, and by the time I got over there, I think it was around like 11 or something. I didn't live too far away, but I was kind of took my time getting over there. And I got over there, and we were just, talking and stuff and having just random conversations. And the conversation came up of her roommate said, this dorm is haunted. Do you believe in ghosts? And I just laughed at her. And I said, well, what do you mean? This dorm is haunted. Like, what happened? And I was very intrigued. And she said, we have both experienced right before we go to sleep that something will, touch us lightly on the face, or, kind of give you like a kiss or a caress goodnight before they go to sleep. So I'm like, what the hell? I didn't really take it serious at the time. Because I was like, these girls are weird. They probably just smoke so much weed. Again, I'm just getting to know, the girl that I'm dating, and her roommate's talking. Her roommate's from Bosnia. So she has a little bit of an accent, but during that conversation, I could see that she was very superstitious. But I didn't really, again, I never really experienced anything supernatural, so I didn't really, take it serious. So as the night went on, we just, the conversation, everybody was getting tired. So and it started to rain really hard outside. So my ex at the time, she was like, you know, you can you can sleep over if you want, but there's no room in the beds, and you definitely don't want to sleep in one of my roommates' beds, even though they're not here. I don't want to, that's their bed. I don't want you to sleep in there. So I was like, oh, I don't have a problem with that. So she ended up making um, a bed on the floor for me. She had a couple of blankets and an extra pillow, so she made me a nice blanket. And her roommate hopped on the phone because, like I said, she's from Bosnia, so I guess she was talking to her parents or her people in Bosnia. So I could hear her talking, and I went in the room, and my ex went, the girl I was dating rather, she went into to take a shower, and she takes long showers, so she was in there for a while. But anyway, I had laid down. It was comfortable, small room, but it was fine. I was dead tired. It was probably around 1:30, 2 o'clock a.m. at this point. So I laid down. It took me like 5 minutes to go to sleep. So I'm sleeping on my stomach, trying to get comfortable, and I just kind of knocked out, just kind of drifted off into a sleep. It was a little humid, but um, there was a fan on that was on very. It wasn't on high. It wasn't like obnoxiously like It wasn't on the high setting. Is what I'm trying to say. So I drift off into sleep, and probably about I'm not sure exactly how much time. It's probably only like 5 minutes, but I went into a deep sleep, and I was woken up by someone touching the back of my neck. And I said to myself, like, okay, she must be out of the bathroom, out of the shower. But I woke up, the door was still shut, and there was no one there. And I could still hear her roommate speaking Bosnian on the phone out in the living room. And I could faintly hear the shower still running. So I'm like, what the hell? So the fan was on. So, it was blowing lightly. So I'm like, maybe it was just a piece of paper or something kind of drifted off a bookshelf and just landed on me. So I'm looking around, feeling, seeing it. Maybe if it was a tag on the back of my shirt, I didn't know what it was, but I didn't really pay it any mind. And mind you, I completely forgot about the conversation we had earlier. It seriously didn't even cross my mind until I went back to sleep, and it did it again, but it was much more pronounced. Like I seriously felt a hand caress the back of my neck. So I'm like, I pop up out of off the floor, out of the bed, throw the blankets off. Actually, I didn't even have the blankets on me because it was so hot, and I didn't want to look like a little bitch. But I will admit that I was kind of shook because the door was still shut, and they actually had those shoe racks on the back of the door to put their shoes in. And so when you open the door, the thing makes a lot of noise. It like knocks or whatever, and the door was squeaky as is because this is an old dorm. This place is like on Huntington Ave, and it's like these dorms are old. You could just tell it's an old building, probably been around for a freaking 100 years. But anyway, I walk out of the room with this look like I saw a ghost on my face, and her roommate stopped talking on the phone and looks at me and points and starts laughing. And she was like, "She touched you, didn't she?" And I'm like, I don't know what touched me, but somebody touched me. I was like, "Is this you guys playing a joke?" And she was like, "No, we told you earlier that there's a ghost in here who will touch you right before you go to sleep." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." And at this point, I am like visibly shooken because there's not many things that scare me, but when you encounter something that you just can't explain, and you don't know where it came from, and I mean, it has a tendency to make you a little scared because it's like you're just used to being in control. Like, okay, it was a bug or a mouse or something fell, but there was nothing in this little dorm room. So I heard the shower shut off, and then a couple minutes later, my girl, the one I was dating at the time, rather, she comes out, and she heard her roommate talking to me, and she said, "What happened?" And her roommate said, "The ghost touched Kevin on the neck," and she starts laughing. She was like, "I told you." And she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "It's nothing to be afraid of. We both felt it plenty of times, and nothing's gonna happen to you. I mean, all she does, or it, or whatever it is, does is like caresses the back of your neck or the side of your cheek before you go to sleep, as just to say good night. Like very caring ghost." And I'm like, this is insane. So I'm, you know, trying to be kind of macho, but it doesn't matter how masculine you are or how macho you are. It's like when something like that happens for the first time and you don't know how to take it. I mean, you get kind of shook. You're like trying to figure out what's going on and there's no answer. And your brain is trying to figure out like what really happened? Like what was this? Did something fall on me? Like, but no. Maybe the first time because I was in such a deep sleep, but the second time it was very like a human hand touched me and caressed the back of my neck. And yeah, so that was my first supernatural experience. And as I kind of, did research and because I was interested in the stuff, it wasn't like I was seeking it, but I just wanted answers because, it happened to me. It was an experience. It wasn't something that I read or in a book or saw a movie. It was actually a real life experience that I could not explain. And I think of myself as a very rational person. And there was no rationalizing this because whatever it was, I couldn't see it. I didn't hear anything. It just touched me exactly like they told me earlier that night. And so, but you know, it shook me up for a little while. It kind of got to the point where I was aware. Now I'm aware of these sort of things. Before I was kind of ignorant to it, and now when it happens, you are aware. Like not that you expect it, but if it's happened once, it might happen again, sort of thing. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, like I was shook for a while, and I at the time was living in a house that was no lie built in the 1700s in Canton, Massachusetts. I was living with my dad. He was renting it out, and the house is actually on like a National Historic Society landmark, whatever. Old house. Um, and the house was kind of scary when you walk. When I come home at night, it's really scary to walk in there. It's like in the woods in the back, and it has a lot of character. It has those old wide plank floors, like wide old floors. And my room was in the back, and it was like it might have been a little kid's room because initially when my dad moved in, it was like wallpaper and it looked like, little kid, like children's wallpaper. I actually had painted over it, painted it white. I peeled it off as much as I could, but I couldn't get it all off because the walls were so old. But I painted it just brilliant white. And it was actually a cozy room. The house, although you might have think if you come over that house, you might have thought that maybe this house is haunted because it's so old, but I've never experienced anything in that house. Never. But then I go to this college dorm and I'm in there for a few hours and I feel a ghost freaking touching me. And I'm just like, what the hell? So she asked me if I wanted to leave. And, me again, trying to, not to look like a little bitch in front of two women. I was like, no, it's fine. I mean, we're all in this room. So, her roommate's in one bed, she's in the other, and I'm on the floor, like in the middle, kind of. And so, we were just all talking and laughing and stuff. And, she was like, I hope she doesn't touch you again. They've knocked out. I honestly was like, I didn't go to sleep until the sun came up. I probably slept for till like maybe 8 o'clock, and I was like, oh, I gotta go. It's time for me to go. I got things to do tomorrow. So that was my first experience dealing with something I couldn't explain. Was it a ghost? I don't know. What else could it have been? Like I felt a hand touch me, and it wasn't either of them, and it was nobody else in that dorm. So I have no idea. And sometimes, just thinking about this, I've heard people experience that maybe entities might follow you or spirits might be attracted to you. And I think that was the case with my ex because I experienced something else a few years later. I mean, we were together for about 4 or 5 years at this point, and we both ended up moving to Florida. And we moved to an apartment that was fairly new. I wouldn't think it was any older than 4 years old. It's right off of 595. I think it's 595, whatever that route is. That west next, not too far from Fort Lauderdale International Airport, in a town called Davie, which is a small town. And it was a nice apartment. It was a two-bedroom apartment. No, it was a one-bedroom apartment. It had a den, but it was nice. It was clean. We kept it very, very clean. But anyway, her uncle had died, and I had just landed a new photography job, so I was photographing watches and stuff at the time at this company down the street. So I couldn't just say, oh, I have to leave. My girlfriend's uncle had passed. But anyway, I really needed the money. I needed to pay rent. So I had to stay. And we agreed that I would, she would go. And she took off that night she left. I think she left around 8. I took her to the airport around 8 and I came back, and I had no problem sleeping back then. And so, for some strange reason, growing up, I would always sleep with the damn pillow on my head. I couldn't sleep unless I had a pillow on my head. And I really don't know why, but I was sound asleep, and it was probably like maybe 2:30, almost 3 o'clock a.m. And I had the pillow on my head. It was pitch black in the room because we had blackout curtains, because sometimes we would sleep in or whatever. And, the Florida sun, so it would be pitch black in that room. So I'm sleeping. I felt something hit my pillow because I had the pillow on top of my head and something flicked my pillow. Bam. So I'm like, what the hell? So I get up, I actually didn't get up. I reached over. I took the pillow off my head, reached over and turned on the lamp on the nightstand. Clicked the lamp on. I'm looking around the room. I'm like, did something fall on my pillow? Like, what the hell what the hell was that? So I actually got up after that because I couldn't figure out what it was. And I'm looking under the bed. Again, we kept nothing under the bed. The room, I'm a minimalist. So we didn't have a lot of clutter in the room. So I didn't see anything. I mean, it could have been a mouse, could have been a bug or a roach, a big palmetto bug. I don't know, a lizard, because sometimes lizards might get in the house. So I'm thinking, but it was like the thud on my head on that pillow was pretty like somebody just flicked it, like bam. So anyway, I didn't see anything. My door, I always sleep with my room door shut when I at night. So I didn't figure out what it was, and I'm still tired. So I'm like, whatever. This time I turned on the bathroom light because we had the bathroom attached to the room. I turned on the bathroom light and cracked the door just so there's a little light coming in. At this point, I wasn't really shook, but I'm like, damn, what the hell what hit my pillow like that? So it happens in twos, just like when I was in the dorm. So I go back to sleep, fall into a deep sleep. And this time something hit my pillow really hard, like bam. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I jump up, I throw the pillow off me. This time I turn on every damn light in the freaking apartment, trying to figure out what the hell, is there something in my apartment? Like, I'm looking under the bed. I grab a flashlight. I'm looking everywhere, like every single corner of this damn apartment. I didn't see anything, but that second thud was like a grown ass man, like bam. And I'm like, and it happened twice. Okay, so again, I'm shook. I'm like, I ain't going back to sleep. I'm like, damn this apartment, damn this room. Because again, I felt like helpless because there's nobody else around. Homegirl is went back up north to her uncle's funeral, and who am I supposed to talk to? Who am I supposed to say, well, something is hitting my pillow while I'm sleeping? I got to tell you guys, to this day, I never sleep with a pillow on my head anymore. So I don't know what it was, but it was hard the second time, enough to really wake me up and get me shook. I'm not afraid to go in the woods at night by myself. I've done that. I've been into like supposedly haunted houses and stuff. I mean, I'm not afraid of anything. There's not really much that I'm afraid of. But when something like that happens and you can't explain it and you can't see it, nah. I'm really curious for anybody else. Really want you guys to engage if you've experienced anything paranormal, supernatural, or just something that you're not able to explain. And I've had a lot of experiences. I don't want to give up everything in this first video, but and I just have to be completely honest with you guys. Everything I'm telling you is my real experience. None of this is exaggerated. I don't even know if this video is going to monetize. I really don't care. What my main goal is to get other people's experiences, because this has been happening to me for a while now. And it's never been nothing negative, thank God, knock on wood. It's never been nothing negative. It's just been some sort of interaction, and I grew up religious. I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, and we were taught not to believe in ghosts or anything. The only thing we were taught to that there's angels and demons, and sometimes demonic entities might attack you, and you need to call on Jesus. You need to call on the Lord, and that works, mind you. Well, we'll get into that later if you guys stay tuned. But I've had experiences. I'm not going to get too much into this one. I'll save it for the next video. But I actually moved to Lowell later, years later in my life. I would say within the last, what is it, 2025, 2019, 2020, I lived in Lowell. I moved into a very old, it used to be a elementary school, and they had made them into lofts and apartments, and I lived on the loft on the third floor. But like I said, if you guys stay tuned, I'll tell you what craziness happened to me in that apartment years later. But I'm really curious that if anything weird like this happened to you guys. I've also experienced UFOs, and I can't say they're alien. It's just, again, I'll save this stuff for other podcast videos, but just things you really can't explain. And I've always questioned myself, like, why is this happening to me? Like, I look at myself as a rational person. I look at myself as I like to try to debunk things and try to look at things from an objective standpoint. Like when, the first time when I'm in that dorm and I'm sleeping and something touched my neck, like I was looking around the room, like, could it have been something fell on me? Could it have been a piece of paper because the fan was on very lightly. But I wake up and get up and I look around thoroughly and I didn't see anything. And then it happens again, like harder this time. And then the same thing happened years later in Florida in a not so old apartment. And it's just so weird. It's just jarring. It like jolts you. It makes you think, almost like when you really look up at the stars at night and you see all those stars, and you can see like, the Little Dipper or any like constellations, and you realize how small we are in the universe, and you realize that it's impossible for us to be alone. There's like an infinite amount of stars, and we don't even know how many galaxies there are out there. So why would something like supernatural or UFOs or aliens be so far fetched? Like, how can we as humans be so ignorant to think that nothing else out there exists? But these experiences really sent me into this quest to just of knowledge and just sharing other experiences with other people who may have gone through something similar, or things like this. And just also being interested in the paranormal. At one point, I was watching a lot of movies and watching a lot of videos about, ghosts and stuff like that. And I had to kind of pump my brakes, because I also realized that, when you go and seek stuff like that, that stuff might, might attract itself to you. So I had to stop. I stopped watching that stuff. Not that I was so interested or just seeking it, you know what I mean? Um, because it's all about energy, right? Nikola Tesla said that in order for you to try to understand the universe, you have to think in terms of frequency, and energy. There's frequency and energy around us. Everything has a frequency. Everything, this table, everything has a frequency. A rock has a frequency, and everything holds energy. It holds memory. And I'm also learning that there's a bunch of different subjects, whether it be UFOs, aliens, it would be ghosts, and paranormal, or something like demonic entities or negative spirits, or just residual. Sometimes there's residual energies and stuff, but I'm going to try to get a better understanding of all of these things. Just to understand, like I said, if there's anybody else going through this, I would love to hear your experiences. and what you think this stuff is. You know, I'm very, very curious on what other people have experienced and what their idea of what the supernatural is and dealing with things that you just can't explain. But yeah, this is my first video on this subject. I know I'm a little rough around the edges. I'm trying to get my studio together. I changed the background and everything like 50 times. And at this point, I don't care if it looks perfect. I want to get my point across. And you know, and I again, I want to hear what you guys have to say about this if you have any other experiences. And I have plenty of them. And again, they're all true. I'm not here to blow smoke. I'm not here to lie. This is the honest to goodness truth. You can put me on a lie detector, and it's just like I'm just curious if this stuff happens to other people, you know, because it's like if I ever tell this stuff to most of, you know, 99.9% of the time, most of the people I talk to look at me like I'm kind of crazy. So, you know, I'm just wondering if anybody else have experienced these things, you know, and if you did, please leave a comment. I would really love to hear about it. You know, let's talk about this. Again, this is my first one, and there's going to be plenty more. So, and you'll hear about my other experiences, just either growing up or just within the last 5, 6 years. You know, I've had plenty of them. I'll give you a preview to another one dealing with UFOs. My uncle had passed away, and my dad lives in North Carolina. He doesn't drive, so he had called me up. My uncle lived in Boston, and my dad had called me up, and he's like, "Can you fly down to North Carolina so we can, you know, you can help me drive up to go to my brother's funeral?" Yeah, my uncle, his brother. So I'm like, "Yeah." So on the way down there, I saw something in the sky that I just could not explain. And again, I'm going to leave this for the next videos, and I hope you guys stay tuned. Thanks again for watching. Take care.